nature, sports and travel. Just three of the things the GoPro camera and the mounting systems associated with it are used for at home and abroad. But the fundamentals of this product, whether it's action shots, whether it's shots in nature, whether it's holiday shots, the thing that holds it all together is a very simple component, or actually two parts joined together in the form of the bolt that holds a GoPro camera together. So in this little exercise, we'll look specifically at the bolt. Now I say the bolt, there are actually three different types or sizes of bolt. This is a basic system clamping together or bolting together two components. That would be an arm or a fixing of some sort. There are two lengths of bolts seen here side by side. They're very similar looking, but they are different. And then there's the bolt used on something like the handlebar mount, which is, if you like, the reverse of the two I've shown you earlier on, where the nut is held in the underside of the plastic component and the bolt comes free. So in fact the black bit, which is normally a bolt, in this case becomes a nut. This one, you can see the crosshead of the screw inside the casing, and it's actually injection molded in place. So it's not screwed together in that particular case, it's one part. So let's get started. We're going to look at the longer bolt, the GoPro mount bolt, and we're going to start by sketching roughly in proportion, but considerably larger than the real thing. Very simple reason from that, it's too small. To get detail in this, to understand, to analyse what you're doing, we need space. So this is an A3 sheet of paper, and we're sketching up in proportion the long looking cylindrical part. It has got a curve on it, and we'll look at that a little bit later on. And there's the part you interact with, the bit you hold on to turn. Looks fairly complex, but if we look in more detail, if we take time to look at the form and the material and how it's been put together, we get a better understanding of it. So you'll see a little pauses here. And now we're not going to run this at normal speed because it took the best part of 45-50 minutes to do this one component. What we will show you is this technique, sometimes speed up faster than another. We're looking at the curve now. We've drawn a proportion of the box we think that the head part would fit into, and we're going for approximation of that curve, speeding up now, and looking at the scoops on the inside with the fingers with a little bit more grip on the inside of that component and how they join up. Everything's in sketch mode at the moment. Everything's in sketch construction lines, so it's light lines even with a pen. Looking at how we'd finish it off, that's the threaded part, the bolt part if you like at the end. Now looking at how it narrows, and just giving an estimate of how narrow it becomes in a freehand long curve between two known external points, which at the moment we think are the same diameter either end. We'll find it out when we get on to measure things later on. So the related end view, remember this is an A3 sheet of paper, it's big size of paper if you like, and we're drawing this big enough to get not just the elevation but the end elevation in place. We trick just using the gauge in the square at the same length and height to get the square sorted out. Initially looking at the end I thought it was square, but it's actually based on a sort of circular part. Now circles and squares are the same proportion where the height and the width are the same, so it's not too bad a thing. I think you maybe point out, just as the light's hitting that this now, you can see the curved nature of this. So we're putting on curves at the ends, 4 of these. So if it was a clock face it would be at 12, 3, 6 and 9, and the width's projected across from the other view, from the elevation. Now look at that curve, it is a freehand guess at the moment, and we're going to have a think about how we're going to measure that, because that in itself is a skill you may not have come across before. And there's some little tricks, either manually measuring or tricks we can use to getting some points and using some CAD software to actually give us a fairly well defined radius on that. So sketching out what would be in the middle of this, it's a hexagonal recess, it's a hole sitting down into the assembly or sub-assembly if you like. The bolt is some way inside that, so that recess we'll have a look at in detail a little bit later on. So looking at, I think there's a hole down the middle for that the threaded part, but there's also the nut head going to be sitting in there. So we're going to look at the parts we might see in we would see as hidden detail. That's the round parts we're forming in at the moment. They would also appear on that end elevation. One of the things about using a GoPro camera, as we're using in this particular mount, apart from that one bouncing a little bit too much, is it does distort the view a little bit. So you'll see the end elevation in this case looks a little bit distorted as it's moved out of the primary cone of vision, the area directly in front of the lens. So that's the bolt coming out. We're going to take that as being the same sort of bolt which has been injection molded in, so cannot be removed, but the same properties of the bolt, different length, same properties we're going to use to to take some dimensions. So slight changing grip, firming in initially with the fine pen. We might firm that in with a thicker pen later on, and getting the technical detail of the thread at the end, the external curves, the internal hexagonal recess. Not too sure what we're going to see there, so we're not firming in just the visible parts at the moment. And now looking at the hidden detail, where this threaded length of the bolt would exist inside, molded into, so you can't remove it, inside that one component. But again, if we're going to draw real things, we have to know how they're put together. So we're just going to get a little estimate by projecting across for that hexagon, in this case across the flats, the AF, across flat size, that hexagon. It doesn't quite come to the end we think. It needs material round about it to give it strength. So we're looking at the height, or the thickness of that bolt head coming from the small bolt that we took out another component. Then the recess. Some of the lines will overlap. Hidden detail lines going in at the moment for the thread, for the external part, for the recess in the head and the bolt head itself. Then we've got the thread, which will also be hidden detail internally. There's already a centre line there. Then the little curves I'm trying to take from the bolt itself. And then examining the head of the bolt, it's got a little crosshead screw slot on the end of it. So we're going to sketch that into the end elevation. So you can see this is speeded up quite a bit. At the moment, we've no sizes, but we're going for proportional sketch, an analytical preliminary sketch. Analytical, you're analysing what's going on. Preliminary, this isn't a presentation drawing by a country mile. This is you trying to get to grips with the detail of the product. And there's the same slot being projected back across onto that end elevation. So lots of little bits that you wouldn't normally or initially think of in the drawing, but you're starting to realise as you analyse the component. It's often a good idea to jot some notes down side. So some little notes going along the side here in terms of what we're drawing and the material and the construction. Just saying it's been injection moulded or it's been moulded into to make an assembly or a sub-assembly of these two parts. So that's the basic, if you like. We could firm in the outline a little bit more in a minute, and we've still got to put obviously dimensions on this so we can actually move from this initial analytical preliminary sketch onto work either in a drawing board or more common these days in a CAD package to model this component or these components as they go together. So let's look at the dimensioning. Again, this is speeded up, and we're looking to take dimensions from the right hand side, from that datum, some diameters to go in and some other detail. We're just preloading the sizes we think we'll need without actually putting the sizes in. Looking at radiuses, diameters, lengths, overall lengths, and lengths for specific components, such as that bolt in the middle there. So having got it pre-loaded, I've gone on and taken sizes, of which I'm carrying on now, and taking some sizes, putting the sizes on the drawing, using the vernier caliper. So measuring the component several times, because these components are not highly engineered, so you may find there's a tolerance, there's a variance in diameter and length, so taking sizes from several places to make sure we get a realistic size. So sizes going in at the moment, dimensions from the right hand side being the data moving along. We're now taking dimensions for the diameters and the M5 metric thread size for the bolt sticking out the end. Then we have a diameter, this little shoulder, the end of the plastic part. We have a diameter to go in there. Don't know about the radius. We're going to look at this a big curved part in a minute or two. So we're taking dimensions off that several times on the way around to get it accurate. And recording the size up here. Now, initially we thought that this shoulder and the one on the right hand side were the same, but they're actually different. Okay, now double checking that is giving us an update on our understanding of this product. To the eye, they look the same. Up close and measuring, we don't have that information. Also, the narrowest point was measured, so we now have the height at the left, height in the middle for the dip on that curve, and the height on the right hand side, and a length of 19 millimeters between. That's going to be kind of important when we come to work out how we're going to generate a size for that curve. The size at the moment, well, we're just going to put a dimension arrow on it and just give it a code. It's obviously a radius to go in there, and we'll call this one radius X. We may have another radius that we've got to do something similar with later on. So we'll have to put some notes about that at the side. So just while we've got this information, we know the height at one end, the height at the other end, the distance between, and the lowest point in the middle. We could use a a little bit of maths to work that out, or we could use some of the features in a CAD application using the 2-point or 3-point arc tool. So we're just double checking the height of the head part for the nut that's going to be, sorry, the bolt that's going to be inside that, and using the plunging end of the vernier to get the depth of the hole. And that's going to just confirm the sizes for the hexagonal bolt and the recess in the middle. And we're putting the sizes down either as AF or AC, across the flats or across the corners. Now we're going to look at the detail for the other radius. This is the one on the end elevation for that scoop that's out. There's 4 of them. And we're just putting some detail, close-up detail of the same part, turned to 45 degrees to make it easy to read. And we're checking the lengths and heights. And again, we're looking to try and get this dip to work out what is that curve there and how can we calculate the ones that are going in grey at the moment. That's the one for the shaft and the one for the handle. Last wee bit then in terms of drawing is to produce a 3D sketch, not quite as big as the full thing, although you could, and just shortness of space on this drawing, going for a slightly smaller one, using the 2 ellipse method on a centre line, the furthest away ellipse being fatter, and then building up the curves relative to the dips on the shaft and the scoops on the handle at the end. Taking a little bit of time just to square that up. We can also add a little bit of tone to this. These are not ultra precious in terms of rules and laws. This is a sketch, a 3D sketch. So adding a little bit of tone just to reinforce the 3-dimensional nature of this component. We're going to keep colour or tone off the orthographics at the moment. We could go on and do that, but we want to keep it clean and clear, so because we're going to use this a lot when we come to go into using the CAD software to create a model of this sub-assembly. We'll probably be making the bolt part and the handle part and then assembling those two together, making one sub-assembly. That's the long bolt on the GoPro. This component is the one you have to use underneath the camera because your fingers jam up against the side of the camera casing if you use a smaller one. So it's a very specific bolt. It can be used elsewhere on the GoPro rigs, but specifically for mounting the camera on the mount nearest to the camera. So looking at a little bit more tonal work, using 2 different pens to build up and then layering up the same pen over and over several times to increase the density of the tone or colour on a specific part. A little bit of shadow underneath there. And this is actually a thread. It's kind of tricky to draw, so just putting little fingers there to indicate the curved part. Second grey going on top because we don't want to leave the whole thing white. And an outline around the outside. That's just got a pretty good representation. Just to make it stand out, we'll float in a little bit of a background. As you know, background's the best if something sticks out of the background. A little bit of shadow and pink when we go over that in grey as well, just to give it a little drop shadow onto the surface underneath. NTS appeared at the bottom there, not to scale at the underneath the drawings, elevation, end elevation, not ideally placed, but it was a space that was available because we wanted lots of room to put the dimensions on this. And a little heading on this one, looking at the logo, which is just slightly off camera on the top of the page here, where it's the GoPro and it's preliminary analysis of the long bolt. That's all we're popping down there. Firm in the outline. This is sealed up quite a bit. There's not any moving marks for this. It's just to remind yourself of what part this is. The various ways of doing this. This is just a quick run through. The GoPro logo is worth considering because we can maybe analyse that a little bit later on in any other analysis we're doing. And the logo that we've got slightly off centre of these 4 colours, well 3 colours, and white. So, just finishing off, we have a much larger scale drawing of the GoPro camera. It's not the camera of the long bolt. We need that size to record information clearly around the outside of it. We need to dimension this. We need to put hidden detail on it. We will be changing our mind. There will be things we're going to get wrong. This is not a definitive piece of work. It is a starting point. Preliminary sketches are starting points. They're not there to impress. They're there to inform, to clarify, to get the ball rolling. And for some reason I've managed to put this in out the right order, so we're now getting the colour floating in. So my apologies, my video editing is going slightly off here. Just showing a little bit of colour going on to the headings, top and bottom. I'll probably find a little bit of red pen going into the top one. So, it took 45 minutes, and what have we learned? We've learned a little bit more detail about the construction. We've learned that we still need to find out some sizes from the components we have. What we ended up with is a page like this, or if you drop it into Photoshop or similar, you can do an inverse, a negative version, looking a little bit like a blueprint. Hope you enjoy your drawing.